What is it? No. What? What? She's alright. I'd say the audio works. I gotta. What cry is that? Somebody leave me a comment once you guys get in here. Oh. Sit with Daddy, huh? Oh. Do you have anything to say? You're right, there is no way Mississippi State should be ranked. Is it working now, Austin? Hey. Oh, you hungry? Oh, okay. Cool. Cool. I think somebody's hungry, Austin. Hey, Mommy. Somebody's hungry. Sorry about the crying baby. I don't want to be that guy, right? What? Alright, well. She said hi, so now I gotta go take her so she can eat. Okay? Say bye. Say bye. Oh, wow. Okay. So if everybody can hear fine, we're going to go ahead and get started. Cool. So, hello everybody, welcome to the Drop the Gloves podcast. This is episode 11, week 12. I I'm your host, Paul. CJ should be joining me momentarily, whenever he can. He will be joining. Um, it's just weird because I don't hear absolutely anything. But I guess it is good. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on what I think. So recap of week 11. Um, First off, we're gonna start out with the Friday night game where Pitt escaped in overtime against North Carolina. Um, 30-23. Pitt covered the 6.5, just barely. Vegas obviously knows something that everybody else might not. Yeah, this was a good game. Pitt is able, and Pitt and Kenny Pickett were able to control what they could. I mean, I kind of picked this to be a close game, but I was more along the lines of thinking that Pitt doesn't really sell me for where they're at, and eventually it's going to catch up with them. I don't really think they're a top 2 team in the ACC, but we'll see where they finish out. In the other game, Cincinnati beats USF 45-28. South Florida covered the 24, but this score is a little not indicative of how the game actually went. Cincinnati was able to pull away early in this game. I know it was at least 21 or 24-7 by halftime, and then just garbage time. So Cincinnati really didn't look bad in this game at all on the road, and they have a big matchup this week. Next game, Purdue travels to the Shoe and takes on Ohio State. Ohio State covered the 19-point spread. Ohio State with a 59-31 victory. The offense is the best in the country, and it's not even up for debate at this point. And the thing surrounding Ohio State still seems to be their defense. But Purdue didn't play bad in this game. I'd say overall it was a pretty good win. I mean, you win by 4 touchdowns. It just proved the game that Garrett Wilson had, that he's more than likely the best receiver in the country. And it'll prove on draft day. The Buckeyes were able to outscore Purdue in the first quarter by putting up 35 points. A lot of teams didn't even put up 35 points as total on the week. But Ohio State was able to cover. And they have a big matchup this week, which I'll be attending. But moving on to the next game, I think this was one of the more dominant games that Ohio State has played. So, gonna go ahead and give their offense a big thumbs up. The defense is still a little suspect here and there, but overall just need to clean some things up. Next game, number 6 Michigan goes on the road and defeats Penn State 21-17. The Nittany Lions are able to keep this very close, and Michigan ultimately did cover the 2.5. But this was a hard-fought game in Happy Valley, and Penn State is probably the best 6-4 team to me. So there's like nothing to really doubt or take away from this. This isn't one of those games where you point out and be like, this team played poorly against so and so. Penn State isn't great, but I wouldn't say they're bad by any means. They've just lost a lot of their tough games. I mean, the Illinois loss is really what's haunted them. But this is the week that you could really tell that Penn State isn't completely out of it, because they've played close with everybody that they've played all season long. And I don't really think Franklin leaves yet, but this is all setting up Michigan for a humongous game at the Big House next week. By the way, if you're just joining us, just want to point out that, like I said before, this is going to be the most interactive podcast episode we had. So anything in the comments, we're going to go ahead and talk about once CJ gets on board. But I'm in here accepting all comments and everything. And I just want to hear what everybody has to say. So, sorry, it's just a lot to do on your own, but it's okay. Next game, we got Alabama playing an absolute powerhouse, New Mexico State. Alabama covered the 50-point spread. Don't know why this game's happening in November. That's a whole nother topic that I could go into. But a 56-point win is expected. It's not impressive. It's not enough to bump somebody unless somebody lost, in my opinion, because you're playing a 1-9 FCS school. But it's okay. Whatever. This game meant absolutely nothing. Next game, we got Mississippi State taking on Auburn, and Mississippi State comes back in this game after being down a humongous amount. They covered the 5.5 and came back to win. Auburn's defense or Auburn's offense stuttered and ultimately did not get the Tigers back in the game. And unfortunately, for Alabama and Georgia's best wins respectively, outside of Ole Miss, both these teams are 6-4 now. I mean, you got 4 losses among the two, but I think Mississippi State just not really sold on them to be a ranked team. I think there's a lot of other teams that deserve the spot better, and I am going to get into more detail on that. Next game, Oklahoma goes to Waco and plays Baylor, and the Baylor Bears took it on the ground to the Sooners. The Sooners held to 14 points. Baylor wins 27-14 and covered the 4-point spread that they were not favored on. Baylor got a decent jump this week, and Oklahoma dropped all the way to 13. So Baylor has a fighter's chance to make the playoff, or whatever the saying is. A random, whatever the saying is. A knockout chance, whatever it is, to make it. I mean, they got 2 losses, so they're really not looking good. If anything, the Big 12 would need Oklahoma State or Oklahoma to go. I don't think Baylor's the team to send from them. But Oklahoma and their fans all year long have been telling me, but we're undefeated. We're 9-0. We're 9-0. We're this and that. And then they played one good team, and this is what happens. And this wasn't a hard game to predict. I mean, I picked Baylor to win. And the reasoning behind it and why it wasn't a hard game to pick was because look at how these teams have been playing. Wins and losses matter, yes. How you win makes it a lot easier to pick games. If you're dominant, you're more than likely not going to get picked against. If you're scraping by teams you should be dominating, then it's easy to pick another team to beat you if they're playing better than you. This isn't the same Oklahoma this year, and I don't think Lincoln Riley. There was talks about him going to LSU, and I just don't see it happening. I know Joel Klatt and Colin Cowherd talked about it today, and they also don't see it happening. I think he stays for a while longer. He's still got plenty of gas in the tank to me. But overall, Sooners not technically done. They went out. I mean, they got a pretty tough road in the Big 12 championship, but they got to play better. I mean, they subbed in Spencer Rattler in this game, and overall, it just didn't really matter who they threw in at quarterback. They just struggled on offense on all cylinders. And next game, we got Wisconsin taking on Northwestern. I predicted Wisconsin to win and cover, and that did happen. Take that cover. Wisconsin with the 35-7 victory. This is 6 games in a row that Wisconsin, after starting 1-3, has won, and 6 games in a row they've rushed for over 200 yards. This offense looks like it has turned a corner, and I believe this is the best team in the Big Ten West. They jumped all the way up to 15 in the current rankings, and I think Wisconsin is really becoming a good team, and I think they're a lot different team from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And in my power rankings that I posted, I had them as a top 5 team in the country right now, and it seems like a bold choice, but they're playing like it right now. They're one of the hottest teams in college football, and I think that they don't lose for the rest of the year until the Big Ten championship. So, I mean, overall, and Northwestern is the worst team in the Big Ten this year. Between them and Indiana. So, moving on. We got number 24, previously number 24, Utah, on the road at Arizona. They only escaped with a 9-point victory, and Arizona covered the 24-point spread. The Utes, a little uneasy in this game on the road, but much more of a comfort behind them when they're at home. Not a bad football team either. They've been on a tear. I thought they deserved the rankings before they were given it, and I'm just glad that they're finally getting some love. But Utah, Overall, their biggest game's coming this week, so we'll have to see what they're really made of. Next up, we got Georgia at Tennessee. Tennessee kept us a game for a little bit. Georgia ultimately pulled away, and Georgia covers the 19.5 point spread. If anybody would like to comment or anything, that'd be swell. I mean, if anybody has a hot take or something, I could debate it, but we'll just keep on chugging on through. Um, I can talk about Georgia's resume here for a second. Georgia is the number one team in the country. They've been proven to be the best team in the country this year, but they're not untouchable. They're not a god squad. They're not Georgia and everybody else. They have a very weak resume. And when it comes to the FBI power ranking, the FBI power rankings of strength of schedule, um, they're actually last in the SEC. In the SEC East, there's not another team that's ranked. Kentucky is the second best team in there, and they're not that good. Although I would argue that, I mean, they're okay, but if one of these other teams had a schedule like currently what Georgia does, I think that they would also be dominant. So it's not that I'm not sold that Georgia isn't a good team. I'm just not sold that they're some god squad that won't lose. Right now, I'd take the field to beat them, and if it was Georgia or the field in the playoff, just because they haven't been tested all year. Their best win right now, I mean, either way you slice it, you want it to be Clemson. They're not in the rankings. Um, let's see, Arkansas, who they're putting in the rankings after losing 3 games in a row. Um, I mean, there's not really a great win on this resume, but and it's only going to get easier for them. They have Charleston Southern and Georgia Tech, so it's just going to get easier for the Bulldogs from here on out. But I wouldn't buy into this team's so good. They got 4 ranked wins and all that, and like this team's aren't even ranked anymore. Uh, I don't know. I'm not super confident in Georgia's offense. Put it that way. Oh, sorry, I had to sneeze. So moving on to the next game, we got Minnesota at Iowa. This was an interesting game here. I didn't expect Iowa to win, but kind of glad they did. Minnesota on the downward spiral now after being put in the rankings, losing back-to-back weeks. Iowa covers their 4 point spread by winning by 5. They win 27-22 at home and improve to 8-2 on the season, one of their best seasons in a little bit. And the Hawkeye defense is really good. The Hawkeye offense is not very good. Minnesota was a good win for them though. So I mean, they have a huge game coming up here next week. I'm pretty sure. So we'll have to really see. But Iowa's been one of those teams that have been overranked bad. They got all the way up to number 2 in the country, and that's one of the biggest faults with the current system and the flaws because everybody was so high on Iowa because of they already got 2 ranked wins. Indiana does not have a win in the Power 5. That's one of their ranked wins, and also Iowa State, who's not in the rankings either. It's a problem when you're comparing teams, not necessarily just building their resume. If you're going to compare Iowa to say Auburn or something and be like, well, Iowa's got 3 ranked wins or 2 ranked wins, whatever you want to call it. No, they don't. Those teams are not that good, and that should count into it because you shouldn't get credit for beating a team that ultimately isn't that good, and other teams beat them down the road, and they're dominating them, and they're not getting credit for it, but you get it because they were ranked at the time. That doesn't sell me. 4-6 Texas, that's supposed to be a ranked win. Get out of here with that. I don't buy that at all, and I don't buy 2-8 Indiana as a ranked win either. Southern Miss and UTSA stayed undefeated as they win 27-17. Southern Miss covered a 32.5 point spread. This game got scary for the Roadrunners, but ultimately they were able to prevail. And UTSA keeps on slowly. It's not a full climb. It's kind of like like you're climbing up a fireman's pole. Like that's how it is. Like they have to inch each time. They don't really get the benefit of just taking the steps and taking a regular stairway up there. It's more of, they have to inch all they can because they're not going to get any respect from the committee, and this game does not help them. Uh, they have a chance to go undefeated, and they probably won't crack the top 10. But that's just how the cards fall. Next game, we got Maryland going to Michigan State. Michigan State gets back on track as they win 40-21. Michigan State covered the 11.5. Kenneth Walker again, another good game out of him. Maryland one game away now. They have two left to be bowl eligible, and they would be the 8th team in the Big Ten. And Rutgers one game away. Also, they would be the 9th team in the Big Ten to be bowl eligible. Michigan State wins by 19. Much needed bounce back. I gotta say, Michigan State's uniforms in these games are horrendously ugly. I don't like the lime green on top of dark green. I think in the state and big across their chest, I think it's just hideous. But overall, this was a good bounce back win for Michigan State. Not too much of a struggle here, which was good. The next game, Texas A&M goes to Ole Miss, where Lane Kiffin and the crew were able to take down A&M, and they covered the 1-point spread that they were not favored. This was a very close game for at least 3 quarters and some change into the fourth. Ole Miss was ultimately able to pull away, and then a turnover sealed it. I watched this game. A&M's offense just was depleted, and ultimately Ole Miss's defense is what came through for them, which has been one of their Achilles heels all year. It's usually been the Rebels' offense which has been able to put them over the top, but Ole Miss proving that they are the third best team in the SEC, and I will confidently say I got it wrong. I thought it was Auburn, but they're just so inconsistent, and Ole Miss, sitting with only 2 losses, looking pretty good. And ultimately this game hurts and helps Alabama, but ultimately does not decide their fate. Next up, we got a hot commodity here. That's the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, as they played the University of Virginia, and they win 28-3. Notre Dame covers the 8.5-point spread. Notre Dame also gets my stamp right there with Wisconsin as one of the top playing teams in the country right now. They are one of the hottest teams in the country, and another team that looks like they have turned a corner. Although saying that, I don't think they should have a shot at the playoff. One is because they don't have a conference championship. They don't even have anything to play for. 2, they don't have a good win on their resume at all. They have a good loss. I'll say that. Their loss, which is weird to say good losses, bad losses, so-and-so, but they lost to a good team, I should say, rephrasing it. But Notre Dame, I guess they do have a good win over Wisconsin, but Wisconsin was in that game the whole time, and I'm not taking any credit away from Notre Dame for pulling away, but the Fighting Irish really have not been impressive, and they're not going to get that extra oomph to jump over these teams ahead of them. I get 3, 6, 7, and 1 and 2 right now. Currently, we'll play each other, and Oregon has a tough spot. With that being said, Notre Dame has the easiest schedule on the way out because they're not going to play another ranked team. Cincinnati is going to have to play Houston, more than likely in the AAC Championship, and SMU next week, who's not ranked, but ultimately I think they should be in about 25. And I don't think it's going to be enough for Notre Dame to get in. They have a high playoff percent chance right now, and I really think it's either the committee or ESPN just trying to make people talk, because I don't really see a real way that this team gets in, especially if Cincinnati is in front of them and undefeated, considering they beat them. We're seeing it with Michigan and Michigan State, that they don't care about head-to-head only for that game. And one of the biggest ways that you lose trust in people is you're not consistent. And if you're going to keep head-to-head for Ohio State and Oregon, head-to-head for other teams like Baylor and Oklahoma State beforehand, then stay consistent and put Michigan State behind Michigan. Or put Michigan State in front of Michigan. The Spartans beat... Gary Barta says, aside from watching the games, the stats and all this prove that Michigan is a better team on both sides of the ball and all this. But what does the scoreboard prove? I'm all in on Oregon should be ranked higher than Ohio State because they beat them. If only there was a way that we could put Michigan and Michigan State on the same field to see who would win. Oh, wait. They did. And there was a clear winner in that game. If you don't stay consistent with a team playing and watching a scoreboard and proving who the winner and loser of it is, then you have to do it for every team, top to bottom. Every single one of them. And Notre Dame should not be an exception to jump Cincinnati. They're not going to have a conference championship to jump Oregon. They're not going to have a conference championship to jump Ohio State. They're going to have a conference championship. I don't think they should even finish in front of Oklahoma State or Oklahoma if it's one of those two. Notre Dame playing really good. Play for a New Year's Six Bowl, and that's what they deserve unless this playoff is expanded. They have an outside chance if everybody loses. Then they'd have a chance. But the chances of everybody losing are slim. And the chances of all these other teams still not having a better case for them, which they won't have a win in a conference championship. You look at how Alabama and Georgia are playing each other. You're either going to get a number 1 or number 2 overall win. Ohio State's or Michigan State or whoever can't make it, but one of those are probably going to be playing a top 15 Wisconsin team. Like, you're going to get that. Oregon's probably going to play Utah again, another ranked matchup. Like in the Big 12 championship, might be Bedlam again, Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. You're not getting that out of Notre Dame. That's not going to be enough to push them over the edge. If this was an undefeated Notre Dame with a win over a highly ranked Cincinnati, they'd be in the top 4 right now, but they're not. Cincinnati dominated them on both sides of the ball, and there's absolutely no reason Notre Dame should jump any of the teams in front of them without a loss. Put it that way. Next up in the ACC, NC State and Wake Forest. The Demon Deacons were able to escape with a 3-point victory. They covered the 1-point spread at home. I think Wake loses this week. We'll get more into that. But it's been classic for Wake Forest. They're going to play just like Wake Forest all year, it looks like, and give up a ton of points but score just a little bit more. Their win margin has to be pretty slim. I'll give them a little bit of a pass here because NC State is a pretty decent team. And I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that was a good win because there are a lot worse teams that they could be playing close. So, Wake Forest, keep doing your thing. I saw you got put in the top 10. I respect it. But unfortunately, I think you lose this week. Next up, we got a team that is only in the rankings to boost Alabama's resume, and that is Arkansas. That's 7-3. I guess they'd be in the rankings, whatever. I'm okay with Arkansas and not okay with Mississippi State. But this is an ugly win, too. Very ugly. Arkansas goes to LSU and has to win in double overtime, and it's a push because they win 16-13. People, LSU is bad. They are not good. Why are teams struggling with them? And it's not because, well, maybe that means LSU's good. No. UCLA dominated this team. I've seen LSU has 6 losses. They've lost more than they've won. They might not be bowl eligible. There's no excuse. Their quarterback is not there. He's not a Joe Burrow. This is ugly from Arkansas. This doesn't prove to me that they're good. I'm not being a hater. I promise you, I'm not. You struggle with a bad team, this is what you get. LSU is not good. LSU got dominated by Chip Kelly and UCLA, and they've lost plenty after that. The Razorbacks, I'm okay with them being ranked, but 20-25 is where they should stay. Next up, we got Oklahoma State. Shout out to Bryce Duke for this one. They win 63-17 at home against TCU. They covered the 11-point spread. Oklahoma State has the best defense in the Big 12. They have a top 10 defense in the country. And right now, they're also in my power rankings up very high for playing very hot football right now. You can go ahead and give them the stamp. Just like that. The Cowboys, ultimately, I think, are the favorite to me to win the Big 12. They already have a win over Baylor, and then you have Bedlam next week. Unless Oklahoma turns a corner, which is possible. But overall, I think Oklahoma State's been the better team. And if this team's undefeated, or there's even a possible chance that this team does get a chance to make the playoff in Oklahoma State, which is kind of weird that you wouldn't necessarily see. It's odd to see Oklahoma State be in the playoff, talk, but I think that they rightfully deserve it. They're right there. Um, like I said before, they have a really good defense, but their resume is going to carry the day for them. And if teams in front of them lose, it's all a possibility. I think this is a team that should jump Notre Dame after Bedlam easily. I mean, depending on how this weekend goes, they should jump Notre Dame. And Oklahoma State already has a win over Baylor, which is really carrying a lot of weight for them right now. Next up, you got Washington State going to Oregon. Oregon wins 38-24 and covers the 13.5. If you guys have not noticed, Vegas does know what they're doing when they make a spread. Generally, 13.5 and Oregon wins by 14. Stuff like that happens. Pitt covered a 6.5 and they won by 7. Generally, they're pretty close. They don't like to lose money. But Oregon was pretty good in this game. They started out very hot. Travis Dye, very good to start off this game. We all know Ryan, beloved host. He was at this game. This game was a little close for comfort at halftime, but overall the Ducks just proved to be just too much for Washington State and the Cougars, who fired their head coach this season. But the Ducks got a huge matchup this week, and I don't know. I'm just keep going back and forth on this game. But I'll go ahead and get into the next part here. We got San Diego State beating Nevada 23-21. Nevada covered the 2.5-point spread. Very close to the spread was the game. I picked Nevada to win this game just because San Diego State has been struggling with blowing teams out, I would say. But the Aztecs were able to escape the Wolfpack with a victory by 2, and San Diego State silently having a very good season for them. Next up, we have the college football playoff rankings and my rankings, and I accidentally put the wrong picture on here. This is my right rankings, but I have it changed up a little bit. 24 for me is Clemson. 23 is NC State. Coastal is not in there. So that's mostly how that's changed. And here's one of my major issues, and if anybody wants to talk about this, I promise this is great. My rankings go as the following for just listeners: Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, Cincinnati, Alabama, Michigan, Notre Dame, Michigan State, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Wisconsin at 13, UTSA 14. I have Houston all the way up to 16 in mine. Wake Forest dropped to 17. I just don't think they're that good. Utah at 18. A&M dropped all the way to 20 for me. K-State at 21. Pittsburgh right at 22. Ultimately, I mean, they're pretty similar to the committees, but the top is different for me. They have Michigan in front of Michigan State, so do I, but I think that that's more than just, mine isn't based off of so-and-so what they say. They'll say, oh, I go off of head-to-head and all that. Head-to-head is a determining factor for me, but one of the biggest factors for me is common opponents, how you look in your wins, quality wins, your losses. That's right, Oregon's number 2 for me. I think they have the best win currently in the country on the road at Ohio State. I think it's hard to debate that. But the thing is, if you go like this with your hand and you go from 2 to 7 or 8, I guess you would say, all of those teams have struggled at some point against teams that they shouldn't have. And I don't think it's fair to nitpick one and say that others don't get that same kind of treatment. Cincinnati struggled with Navy. Ohio State struggled with Tulsa. Alabama struggled with Florida. Michigan State lost to Purdue. Oregon lost to Stanford. Everybody has a flaw there. That's why Georgia's number 1 clear cut. Oklahoma State has a flaw too, but like I said, they're kind of just right on the outside part looking in. But there's absolutely no reason to me that Alabama should be number 2 right now because they have not proven it on the field. They're getting the benefit of the doubt because of the patch that's on their jersey that says SEC, and I don't think that that's rightfully fair. But the biggest issue I have with these rankings, not Houston at 24, even though I have them way higher. I've had them in my rankings for weeks now because they should have been. It's not Wake Forest at number 10. It's Mississippi State being ranked at all. Clemson should be here. SMU should be here. Kansas State should be here. I mean, there's a few other cases you could make. Kansas State, SMU, Kentucky could be here. Clemson is the main one, I would say. That should be here. Clemson's 3 losses are to Georgia, NC State, and Pittsburgh. And Mississippi State has 4 losses, which is more than Clemson's losses, and also lost to Memphis, who's one of SMU's 8-2. Their SMU's losses to ranked Houston and to Memphis, the same team as Mississippi State, and they have 2 less losses. Okay. So why is Mississippi State here? There's not an actual reason. I guess Arizona State could also be here. They're 7-3. There's just a few. We all know why Mississippi State's actually here. It's because they want to favor the SEC. Alabama has a 40-point win over this team. Mississippi State is ranked with a 40-point loss. They 40-point loss and a loss to Memphis. 5-5 Memphis at that. There's no actual reason for this team to be here other than boosting Alabama's resume. And it's not fair to the rest of college football. Because there are a lot more deserving teams to be here. And this is one of the biggest issues is when you have subjective rankings and not objective rankings, you let people's bias and opinions get into the actual official things that should happen on the field. There are teams that have shown it on the field that they are better than Mississippi State. Mississippi State just beat Auburn. Okay, Auburn has 4 losses. That team's not even ranked. That's a good win for Mississippi State. Not a good enough win to put them in the rankings to me. I think 6-4 Penn State's better than Mississippi State. They beat Auburn just like they did. Moving on. Here's my Heisman rankings. A little bit different this week. Got some people moving up, some people moving out. I got Kenneth Walker from Michigan State. Clear number 1. Travion Henderson stays at 2. Abram Smith and Bryce Young switched spots for me. The Baylor running back who used to play linebacker had a great showing against Oklahoma and Waco. Bryce Young still looks pretty good for Alabama. I mean, they won by 56 because they played New Mexico State. And a player that I was debating on putting on here, but his dominance is just too much to overshadow. That's going to be Jordan Davis from Georgia. The best defensive player in the country. This is pretty straightforward, I'd say. Number 1 and 2 for me are in a head-to-head battle. Matt Corral is at 6 for me. Then you got, your Bijans and that. And I just... These rankings are pretty straightforward for me, and that's mostly how it's going to go for the Heisman rankings until these next couple weeks everything gets spiced up. I got to say that the field's wide open. What's his name? Anderson on Alabama. He's also in my top 10. Garrett Wilson is towards the bottom of my top 10. But yeah. And that's mostly what I got. And before I do my Week 12 predictions, I gotta say I did some midseason awards. My front runner for Heisman right now is obviously Kenneth Walker. Offensive Player of the Year, I got Kenneth Walker. Defensive Player of the Year, I got Jordan Davis. Coach of the Year candidates, I got number 1, Luke Fickell from Cincinnati. Has the highest ranked team of a team not in the Power 5 ever, all the way up to number 2 for them. and now highest in the playoff ranking ever at number 5. I think it's an incredible job what he's done there. Cristobal from Oregon is also up there. I mean, great job from him out of there. I got Baylor's head coach up there for that. And then there's a award for outstanding receiver that gets the best receiver in the country. I have Garrett Wilson at that part. Um, but yeah, the rest is mostly pretty spread out and even. Week 12 predictions. I'm currently sitting at 59 and 45. CJ stopped picking at 20 and 20. So you're just going to get Paul's straightforward picks right now and see what you think. Here, everybody in the comments, you guys could also vote with me on each game, and we're going to go ahead and go through them. Starting out, we got Memphis at Houston. Houston favored by 8.5. It's a over under 60. This is a Friday night game, 60.5. I like Houston at home. If this game was at Memphis, it has upset potential as we've seen Memphis beat Mississippi State and Memphis beat SMU. But Houston at home, a lot to play for. I think these are up. Yep, these are updated. So number 24 Houston, who I think should be ranked higher. I think they know how much they have to play for the AAC championship. I'll take Houston to win and cover. San Diego State goes to 2-8 UNLV. UNLV is given the Aztecs 10.5 points. Go ahead and take the Aztecs to win, but might not cover the cover. The spread's about right where I would say. UNLV might be good enough to stick around. This is Tate Martell's team now, right? He doesn't start, but I'd take San Diego State. Next, we got the game I'm going to. That's Michigan State at Ohio State. The craziest thing about this is that Ohio State is favored by 19. That spread is ridiculous to me. I think it should be about 6.5 to 7. This is a steep spread. This is bulletin board material here. And it's kind of crazy. Like, does anybody else find this really insane? Kickoffs at noon. I'm going through literally the best 3-week span for a college football fan that I could ever have. I'm going to Columbus for Ohio State, Michigan State this week. Next week I'll be at the Big House for Ohio State at Michigan, and after that I will be at the Big Ten Championship in Indianapolis. Send the call again. I'm in just the chat room, CJ. You should be able to see it and just drop the gloves. I'm going to take Ohio State to win but not cover. I know that this is the best offense in the country, but it's more of Michigan State's offense versus Ohio State defense for me. Overall, I think Ohio State's offense with Jackson Smith and Jigba, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson will be able to take advantage of their secondary, but Kenneth Walker III could have a career day. And let's see if we can get CJ in here to help me pick. CJ's not even in here. Well, he wouldn't have been able to join anyway. Let's call CJ. I didn't mean to call Ryan. Sorry about that, Ryan. How do I... Here we go. Okay. CJ?
Yep.
Yo. Okay, cool. You're in here. You ready to go through these picks with me?
Yeah.
Cool. So can you talk real quick? Let me just make sure I got your audio.
Yeah, what's going on? A little late, but, we're here.
Yeah, you're late, but you're here. Is there anything that you want to talk about from the previous games or the rankings of last week? Baylor beating Oklahoma. Ohio State beating Purdue. Cincinnati beating USF. Anything?
Not really. I mean, a lot of it kind of just evened itself out. There's still a path for UC and Oklahoma to make the playoffs, so we'll see.
Now, I already picked the first 2 games, and I don't really think you care about them that much. But I'll just ask you real quick. Who wins Memphis at Houston?
Houston. And for the next one, is it the San Diego State game?
Yeah.
I would take probably San Diego State.
Okay. And then next you got Ohio State and Michigan State.
Uh, that one's a little tough.
Did you see that the
It
spread
depends
is the
on.
spread is 19?
I don't agree with that,
I don't either.
but it all depends on which Michigan State team you see. We're gonna see the one that came out and lost. Who was it to Purdue? It was Purdue.
Yeah, Purdue.
They lost to Purdue. Or are we gonna see the one who took Michigan to the final seconds and then beat them? So I mean that's what it depends on. I'd still take Ohio State, but I want to take them to cover.
That's exactly what I said. I said that the spread in this game should probably be around 6.5. What? How do you feel about that line?
If it was 6.5,
Yeah,
I think it would be more respectful to Michigan State. I mean, they're a good football team. It's just when you have one bad week, you can't have a bad week in college football.
it's true. Next game, I thought it was going to be my upset special, but I guess it's not even an upset. Clemson is favored by 4 at home to number 10 Wake Forest. I gotta say, this has to be one of the more disrespectful lines, and it's just the fact that if you take the team names away, what number 10 team on the country is playing an unranked and is not favored?
Well, let's be honest. Clemson probably should be ranked. They probably should be ranked 25th.
I had them at
I'd rather have
24.
them in there than Mississippi State, but that's for another day.
I already went
I would
over
take
it, so
Clemson. Yeah, I was gonna say I would take Clemson to win this,
I think
and
so
I'd
too.
say honestly, I think by 2 touchdowns. Wake Forest defense is horrible. It all depends on if Clemson's offense can come out and show out for 1 week.
Well, here's how it goes. Clemson's defense is still really good. They've played good all year, but their offense has been bad. And then Wake Forest's offense has been good, but their defense is atrocious.
Yeah, so
Clemson's
it's
favored at
just one of
home in
those
this
games.
game, and I just think Clemson's defense will be able to slow down Wake Forest more than Wake Forest will be able to score on Clemson. So I'm
I
taking
agree with that.
Clemson with the quote unquote upset. Next, you got a powerhouse game. You got Charleston Southern 4-5 going to Georgia. There's not even a spread on this game.
I mean, Georgia's gonna win. It's just
Uh,
one of it's a
nah,
game that's really not. Okay, Austin saying Ole Miss. Well, I want to get into Ole Miss a little bit just because of what happened the other day. But this game, Georgia wins by 30.
at least, at least. And another absolute powerhouse game. You got Tennessee State going to Mississippi State. Tennessee State 5-5. They're also there's also no spread on this game.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't really seen Mississippi State play. I
They've
would
lost
pick them
four
to win.
times.
I'd say by 30. But I mean, it's like I said, I haven't seen them play. But I mean, see, here's the thing. Like, and this is what sucks about the SEC. And this is nothing. The SEC teams can't do anything about this. They only play. Is it 8 conference games? I think everybody else plays 10.
Everybody else plays 9, and
Which
it's bull.
that's on the conference. That is not on the teams.
It's not on the teams, and it's the SEC is spitting in the face of the other conferences with this. While nobody cares if you play Charleston Southern September 4th. Nobody cares if you play Tennessee State September 20th. This is November. You got Ohio State playing Michigan State, Oklahoma playing Iowa State. You know what I mean? Like you have conference games across the board. You got SMU and Cincinnati playing their tough games. Why is this game being played? Let me ask you this, CJ. How many teams are in the SEC? West and East combined.
I couldn't even tell you.
14. How many teams are in the Big Ten?
I couldn't tell you 10 in each conference.
14.
I don't know.
They both have 14. Why does one have to play 9 conference games and the other plays Tennessee State and Charleston Southern? It's not fair.
It's well, that's how they do it. But what I'm saying is here, would you rather them not play anybody there? Because I mean,
They're basically
to
not
me
playing
like
anybody. They have no chance at losing this. Georgia could play their third string and beat Charleston Southern this week. Is that
okay,
true?
I understand that. But I'm saying I'd rather them at least play a game than not play. That's how I look at it.
Well, I just don't think it's fair to everybody else at all to do this. And I think that this is one of the things that we can fix, and it's not like I'm gonna pity the SEC for it, CJ. But I think that either 8 or 9. I think that everybody, when you're comparing to go into the playoffs, should have to play the same amount.
Well, then that's the difference. You'd have to straight up tell everybody, look, if Ohio State is playing 10 conference games, it's more than likely they're going to drop the conference games and make them go up. So it'd more than less be everybody play 8 instead of 10. Which
That's
then
fine.
everybody's going to get into the
That's all
same
right.
situation where Georgia, Bama, Auburn, all those guys are, where they have to play somebody where they might not want to play them, but it's better than just sitting at home and practicing all week.
Well,
Because I mean, you can see this like
I'm okay with dropping Ohio State from playing 9 games in conference to 8, as long as that's what everybody's doing. Not Ohio State has to play 9-1, 7th ranked in the country, Michigan State this week, and Georgia plays Charleston Southern.
I understand that, but you can also say that say Georgia doesn't play here, and they come out next week and play. Well, not them because they're playing Georgia Tech next week. But if Alabama say because they're playing Arkansas right now, said they were playing Charleston Southern, they just didn't play and they had to play Auburn next week. They're not going to be ready for that game. I don't disagree with playing a game like that, but I don't think it really helped. It shouldn't help their schedule at all.
Well, I mean, these other teams have to play a gauntlet in November. These other teams are playing, like, look at Oklahoma's schedule the last 3 weeks. Even Oregon's going to have to play Utah twice. Like, they shouldn't
Yeah, but
just
that's
get
on
ahead
them.
because of this.
Don't schedule your harder games like spread them out. Don't just put them all back to
Ohio
back to
State doesn't
back.
have a choice. They play Michigan the last game of the year every year. There's no choice for that. And then the Big Ten championship. What I'm saying is just play an extra game in September. Play this in September. I'd rather them
You
have
can
a.
play it in September, but at that point they're not going to play. That's what I'm saying. I'd rather
I'd
them
rather
play
them
than not
take a
play.
bye before starting conference play. After they played Charleston Southern in the fourth week of September, and then play the rest of their conference after that. So they still play 8, but it gets pushed to now than what they're doing right now.
I mean, you can do that, but you also have to look at it as maybe that's the only slot to be open. We don't know. Like schedules, you never know how it goes. I mean,
I just
scheduling is
think it'd
always
be more
weird.
fair
I
if you're
don't.
going to compare conferences across the top to make a playoff. Everybody plays the same amount of conference games 8, 9, 10, whatever you want it to be. I think that they should because these other teams aren't getting a Charleston Southern to play 4 non-conference games. They're getting 3, and they these games have no chance of losing. By the way, my phone died, so you're gonna have to tell me if anybody comments, okay?
All right, it's just Smiley.
Yeah. So we'll move on to. I guess we might as well just throw this game in there while we're at it. I'll skip over the next one, but Prairie View at Texas A&M. There's not a line for this game either. Like,
I mean, it's just how it is. I mean, right now you can't do nothing about it, and they you just go on and play. I mean, Texas A&M their playoff hopes are gone anyways. They don't really have a chance to get in. So
yeah.
it's a meaningless game at the end of the year for them. And until they Texas A&M has always been this team, but they cannot get over the hump, which they have one of the best wins in the country right now against Alabama. But the problem is they also have 2 bad losses.
Mhm. And the rest of their
3, but
resume
actually they have
before that
3.
doesn't even look good. They have a 10 to
Oh,
7 win over Colorado. That's very ugly because that Colorado team's terrible. Like that's not gonna carry any weight for them. So
well,
they're yeah.
it won't carry no weight because I mean just right now that one against Alabama practically means nothing with 3 losses.
As it should.
It means something against Alabama, but it means nothing for Texas A&M. You have
I
3
agree.
losses, your playoff hopes are over.
I agree.
Now, for a bowl game, I'd love to see Texas A&M and Wisconsin play. I think that would actually be a good game.
I do too. I think that'd be a good game. A team that I'm not really sold to play in a good bowl game to, like, I don't think Wake Forest. Like, I don't want them in a New Year's Six.
I mean, I think you have to though, and I say you have to just because they're the best team probably
Let them play Notre Dame.
in the ACC. Well, see, that's where I don't like it because Notre Dame has to play 4 ACC teams. That is in their schedule. It's part of their agreement because one, they're in the ACC for basketball. If I'm correct, I think I
I'm
am.
pretty sure they are.
But I don't like them playing another ACC team. I'd rather them play somebody
Let them
more
play.
like in the SEC or the Big Ten. So like, say Michigan State, if they lose to Ohio State this weekend, that's 2 losses. I'd love to see them play Wake Forest.
Yeah.
I'd love to see if Michigan has 2 losses, them to play Wake Forest, something like more like that.
Okay, that's fair. Or how
There's
about
just
one of the three teams that are last from the Big 12 out of Iowa State, Oklahoma, and or not Iowa State, out of Baylor, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. They could play them.
yeah, you could throw one of them in there. Oklahoma would probably be a really good game, high scoring. Uh,
Dude, they would. What would the over under would be like 110 on that.
I'd probably be 70 to 60. But I mean, it's looking at it since we skipped over the Oklahoma game.
Well, that's what I was gonna
Uh,
go back to. I was like, speaking of Oklahoma, they're favored at home by 4 against Iowa State. Iowa State. Colin Cowherd picked Iowa State in this game, and I don't feel that way. I feel like almost anything, Oklahoma's going to come out pissed off, and they're going to come out and easily cover the spread and win by a few scores.
I agree with you. I mean, it hasn't been their year, and like we've talked all year about young talent, right? We've talked about
Mm,
Ohio State, Alabama, both of them having young talent. This team is also young,
yeah.
but the problem is they're also not a defensive powerhouse.
Mm,
But Caleb Williams looked very shaky in that loss Saturday, and then they brought in Rattler, didn't really give him a chance, and their offensive line looked horrible. Like it's hard, but I'd say Oklahoma wins this, and they come out pissed off, like you said.
yeah, I just don't see a Lincoln Riley team coming out and folding couple 2 weeks in a row. You know what I mean? Like giving it their all on a team against a team that's better than them. Like the LSU Oklahoma game was like a perfect example to me of it wasn't necessarily Oklahoma played bad. I just thought they were outmatched but that was also one of the best college football teams of all time. That's not the case when I saw Oklahoma play Baylor. I think that if they play, multiple times, Oklahoma will beat them. But Oklahoma, before they head to Bedlam, I think they're going to win this game. Um, I wouldn't say by a few scores. I think they'd probably be by about 14. My prediction is about 34-20. I guess maybe. I think that's low scoring, but Oklahoma's defense ultimately didn't look terrible on Saturday. But but yeah, that's like you said. Oklahoma's young, and they have a high turnover ratio when it comes to players leaving too. The two youngest teams in college football, number one's Ohio State, number two's Alabama. Oklahoma's in the top five. Like they're right there too for being young. So these teams being able to bounce back year after year after year, it just shows you how good their coaches are. And Lincoln Riley is a top five coach in college football.
Oh yes, and like you have to look at like what they're going through. They still control their own destiny. People might hate to say that I say that, even though they're number 13 in the country. Michigan could lose at least once or twice still. You have Ohio State, they play this week. If they lose, that's 2 losses for them. Michigan State, they could still lose twice. There's a lot of stuff that could happen. We don't know what's going to happen in the SEC championship game. As Alabama loses, their season's over too. Oregon at Utah, that could be another game where you don't know what happens. So, realistically saying Oklahoma still has a chance, they do. Is it very likely? Not really, but they have to win 3 straight games, and that's Iowa, Oklahoma State, and most likely Baylor.
Yeah, and that's just super tough to do. I said even before last week, I picked Baylor to win, and I said that even if Oklahoma wins one of these, like I said, they're going through an absolute gauntlet, right? Like they don't have a Stony Brook to play for a breather. Each week in and out is just gonna be grueling for them. But I think overall the Sooners are the most talented team in the Big 12. They've won it 5 years in a row. They can, if they lose, I mean, it's not going to be a huge step back for them. They're just so used to excellence that, I mean, it's just really tough. And I don't like really the call to keep on going back and forth as soon as. That's one thing I don't agree with, CJ. If you look at the Texas game, okay, Rattler isn't playing well. Don't even let him finish the game. Here comes Caleb Williams. And then you look at the Baylor game. Caleb Williams, okay, not playing that well. Put in Rattler.
Yeah, I agree. You gotta stay with one.
Yeah, I think you got to stay with one. You don't even give those guys a chance to. I mean, what was it, 10-7 when Rattler was put in that game? And
I think
obviously
it was
Baylor's defense was.
17-7.
But if Baylor's defense was controlling the game, I mean, your offense can't, your offensive line and the chemistry and everything just can't keep on going back and forth from play callers like that.
No, but also a reason Williams got pulled was because of some injury that happened around halftime.
Yeah,
It
when he got
wasn't
his
just
hand
because
stepped
he,
on.
yeah, it wasn't just because he was playing bad. They were being cautious about it, but I don't agree with putting him back in. At that point, you roll with Rattler, and I mean there were some missed calls there too. I was watching the game. There was a deep ball thrown. The guy was pulling him down. And no pass interference was called or anything. That's a 3-and-out drive that Rattler can't do nothing about because the flag's not thrown. But Rattler, he deserves. I think he deserves his chance, but it won't be with Oklahoma next year. I mean, they've shown Caleb Williams as their guy. But I mean, I think it's still a good opportunity for Oklahoma in these next 3 games. Hopefully, to come out and win 2 of them to play in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I don't think they're done for at all. Like I said, they have an outside chance to get in the playoff, but it's not a super unrealistic chance. Like it's not like you're looking for 50 things to happen. Next, you got Illinois at Iowa. Iowa favored by 13. 4-6 Illinois at Iowa. Iowa won last week. I just don't know if Illinois has enough in the tank. I think this is probably the wrong spread. I actually think Iowa's going to play this game closer. Give me Iowa
I was
by
going to
about six.
say, I'd say this would be my upset of the week.
You got Illinois winning.
I got Illinois winning. I don't trust Iowa's offense. I don't care how great your defense is.
Your
If you
offense can't
can't,
score.
yeah, if you can't put up 7 points, you don't deserve to be a top 20 team in the country, and that's just how it is.
uh, that's fair. I was debating on doing that too, but I'm going to lean towards Iowa just because Illinois is not that good. Georgia Tech 3-7 at Notre Dame. Notre Dame favored by 17. Notre Dame's one of the hottest teams in the country. I'm taking Notre Dame to win and cover.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'll take Notre Dame to cover. They've looked good. I think Cohen's actually starting to play good. He's finally getting healthy. And they're looking like themselves from a couple years ago. They're not looking like the team that we keep saying is overrated every week in and week out. They're finally playing to their potential.
Yeah, and Notre Dame at their potential, they're a top 10 team, and I don't think Georgia Tech is.
No, you,
uh,
you could make the argument they're top 5 when they play to their potential.
you could, you could. I mean, there's top 8 is. I mean, I like their spot where they're at right now. Next up, CJ, a team that should be ranked, and that's SMU at 8-2 at Cincinnati 10-0. This is Cincinnati's biggest game since the Notre Dame game, and Cincinnati's favored by 11.5. And I don't think people are going to take into consideration just how good SMU is if Cincinnati doesn't win in a blowout.
Well, I mean, a lot of people have to look at it. The SMU quarterback last year was on Oklahoma. He didn't win the starting job to Rattler, so he transferred out to go to SMU. I will be at this game Saturday, and I think it's going to be a very good game.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And
You
I'm
told me
going
you
to
were
take
going.
UC to cover.
Yeah. You've gone to a lot of their games, haven't you?
Yeah, that's and this is one thing. Like I've talked to you about
I'll
this.
be at the Ohio State game Saturday, so.
People need to realize watching the game on TV is not the same as being there and watching it in person. The
100%
fact you
agree.
don't see everything on that goes on. When UC played, was it
Tulsa?
Tulsa?
Yeah.
Tulsa, a guy kicked the UC player. Wasn't shown on TV. Didn't get kicked out of the game for it. Nothing happened. So like a lot of things, refs were trying to throw that game for him, and people will say they didn't. I was there watching it. No calls went in the favor of UC. So for all the UC haters to sit there and say they don't deserve their shot, they're not blowing people out, they're not doing what they have to do. I like what Luke Fickle said. Who cares about the college football playoffs? We're here to win games and win the conference. That's the best way to go into it, and hopefully you get your shot at the end of the year.
I take a different approach at it. I think you can't nitpick UC when every other team has also struggled. I mean, besides Georgia, every other team has been flawed all year. So
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
but I
think
mean,
it's
but you
fair
know
for
how
them
it
to
is.
have such a good resume at the point, such a good resume building win at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is only proven to be this really good team now. That should be taken away from them. And what you're telling me is UC has to blow everybody else out, but teams playing worse than them or as good as them don't. That's just a load of crap to me. I mean, SMU's a good team. They should be in the rankings to me. Like I said earlier, CJ, SMU's two losses. One is to a ranked Houston team, and the other one is to Memphis, the same team that beat Mississippi State. So,
Right, you
and
can't
they
hate
have
on
two
one team for losing to another one.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you're gonna ignore, and SMU has two less losses than Mississippi State.
Right, and I'd have no problem throwing them in there. I'd have no problem throwing Clemson in at the number 25 spot.
Yeah.
Where they don't realize this, and not a lot of people do. This Mississippi State being at 25 means absolutely nothing. And what I tell people with the Auburn thing too, everyone's like, "Well, Auburn's a better win than Notre Dame." No, it is not. It is
Wait,
absolutely not.
Auburn's a better win than Notre Dame. What are you talking about?
Or it's a better
Or
loss
when
than like to UC. Like, dude, people were saying
I'm
that
confused. Wait, which team are you comparing to? UC and who?
so the loss that Notre Dame has to
Oh.
like saying like somebody said that UC like oh they're overrated blah 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 Notre Dame's overrated like UC don't have a better win than say against like uh
Oh, against Auburn.
against Auburn or Ole Miss like
Auburn has four losses.
yeah like Auburn has 4 losses they also beat some teams but they're like oh that's a better win no it's not they're over like teams if you have 4 losses you don't deserve to be in the rankings it is
You
that
don't.
simple
Yeah, I agree
you
with
have
you.
no reason to be there.
And the thing is, like, oh, that's another team that deserves to be there. 9-1 Louisiana. How are they not in the rankings? They haven't lost since week one. They lost to Texas Tech in week one and have not lost since.
They're not favored. I mean, they're not. It's like the rankings, and I agree with what Matt said. Like they're just trying to put a number on these teams just to see that, just so you can see the TV ratings go up. That's what they're doing, and it's just not right.
Well, CJ, let me ask you this. What is their actual reasoning for putting Mississippi State at 25? Because there's 5 or 6 other teams that have a better argument to be here than them. There's not a good
Uh,
reason, is there? There's not one good
there isn't.
reason.
There is no good reason, but I mean, we're
And
not
it's
surprised when they lose this week. We'll see what happens. Actually, they
uh,
won't lose this week. When they lose next week, we'll
yeah,
see them with
but
5 losses out of it.
for being there, and this is what I talked about. For everybody that says outside the top 15 it doesn't matter, it does matter, and here's why to me. All the wins that the teams at the top have and their resume gets built up by the teams at the bottom of these rankings. So having a team in the top 25 is only looking better for Alabama, right? Like I'm not saying that that's the say all be all, but I'm saying that looks better for Alabama for Mississippi State to be in the rankings because they beat them. Versus if SMU was in the rankings and Cincinnati beats them, that'll look better for Cincinnati, and they don't want to push that agenda to have Cincinnati have multiple ranked wins. They'd rather put another ranked win under Alabama's belt, boost their strength of schedule, and keep on, having SEC as most teams in the rankings and all this and that. Mississippi State does not deserve to be there. Like I said, SMU, Louisiana, the Power Five bias is very obviously there, um, because like I said, Louisiana, SMU, um, they deserve to be here. Clemson deserves to be here. Arizona State deserves to be here. Kansas State deserves to be here. Like all these teams have better resumes than Mississippi State to be here, and there's not an actual good reason that this team is here.
No, here's the way that they're here. I mean, they have a win against A&M. They have a win against Kentucky, even though they're
Not
not ranked
ranked,
anymore. Auburn, they've won against
not
them.
ranked.
They have decent wins. Their losses are what kills them. They've lost to LSU, a loss to Memphis,
How much? What was
Arkansas.
the score to Alabama?
Oh yeah, absolutely destroyed.
You lose by
But
40 and you're still ranked? I don't buy that. And by the way, Arkansas, a team that bouncing back and forth, and they're going to be out of the rankings again after this week. Um, and you lose to Memphis, and you lose by 40. And who was their other loss to? A&M.
who are we talking about? Arkansas.
Oh no, Mississippi State beat A&M. I'll give them that. That's a good win for them. I mean, they're 7-3. It's not like they beat Georgia. But I mean, Auburn, a 6-4 team that's not in the rankings anymore. Kentucky, a team that's not in the rankings anymore. Like, this is what I'm talking about when I say this strength of schedule and giving teams wins based off where teams were ranked versus where they actually are is complete horse crap because this is how this happens.
But here's the thing: like you could say it for Purdue as well.
You can. I'm with you. I'm
And like, but
100%
but
with you.
this is where like I don't agree with like the SEC bias. I don't know if you looked at the committee. There's only one SEC school.
Yeah, but
Do you
that has
know
nothing to do with their actual opinion of it because there's not a reason Mississippi State should be here.
there isn't? But there's you can make several cases for half these teams to not be there. UTSA,
They're undefeated.
they're undefeated, but why should they be there? Who would they
Because
beat?
they're undefeated. They're
Who would
10
they
and 0.
beat?
Who'd they lose to?
There's how many teams undefeated though? There's three.
UTSA deserves to be there over Mississippi State. They've lost 4 times as much as them. Mississippi State barely has a winning record. They're barely above average. Like they're barely above 500. I'm not saying that it's necessarily SEC biased. It's Power 5 bias here. That SMU, who would be a good resume boosting win for Cincinnati, they don't want to put SMU in the rankings because if Cincinnati wins, they can't say that Cincinnati played down to their competition again and didn't blow out a team when they win this week. And just to pick this game, I got Cincinnati winning, but not covering the 11.5. I think they win by 10.
Man, I've said exactly what you've said all year. I've said the UC's gotten the shaft, and they'll continue to get the shaft. Houston at 24 is an absolute disgrace when you have other teams ahead of them with 3 losses, and that's
And
just
they're
not
9 and
right.
1.
But
That's what I'm saying.
uh, I'll take UC to cover.
Oh wow, you're going with that?
I think their defense is going to come out and actually play like they know how to. I think what's killed them is, and Fickle got on him. He was so tired of it. He's like, I'm tired of hearing about the playoffs. Go out there and play like you know how to play football. Don't like they're trying to play too perfect, and when you try to play perfect, you screw up more than you should.
Yeah, and Matt made an interesting point to me about it. After the Tulsa game, when UC's defense made the goal line stop, he had to turn around and tell his offense and the rest of the players to get excited because they all just looked mad because they didn't blow out Tulsa. Like, how often are you told that you should celebrate wins? And
I mean, you should always like to them that's dumb on their part. They should always celebrate. Do I agree with them? Not no, I don't. I think that a win for them is good, and they just have to keep winning and win their conference. They do that. Leave it up to the committee. If they don't put them in, I mean, it sucks, but sooner they'll be in the Big 12 in a couple years, and I think they'll be one of the better teams in the Big 12.
yeah, you can't wait to go down to Nippert and watch some Big 12 football.
Oh, it'll be good. I mean,
Watch
although
Baylor and Oklahoma State and those teams come.
right, like even though Oklahoma and Texas are leaving, which I don't understand why Texas is. That's absolutely insane. But yeah, I mean it'll be good for them, and hopefully, like if they don't make it this year, then once they do go there and prove that they deserve to be where they're at, people will give them the respect they deserve.
I agree. I agree. But like I said, I don't think UC covers just because it's 11.5. I think they win by 10, which I don't think that's really a crazy
No, it's not
bold
crazy.
prediction. Um, Next game you got Michigan at Maryland. Michigan favored by 15. I got Michigan in this game. Uh, Tulia Tagovailoa is actually the leading passer in the Big Ten. Did you know that?
I did, but I also know he probably has the most interceptions in the
He
Big
has
Ten
the
as
most
well.
interceptions, and he has at least 50 more pass attempts than everybody else behind him. Because all they do is throw the ball.
Which is it's not favorable for him, but uh, I don't know. I think this game's gonna be a lot closer than people think. I'm gonna take Michigan, but I'd only say by a touchdown.
Oh, you think they escape?
I think they escape.
Okay.
We're
I'd
getting
say
towards
the
the end of the
spread's about.
year.
I think the spread's about right. They might be overlooking it. And Maryland's planning to be bowl eligible. They're 5-5.
I thought you only had to win 5
You have to win
versus
6.
6. 6.
So they're gonna do what they can to
Oh
make a
yeah, I
bowl.
mean you want to get a bowl game.
Next, we got Virginia at Pitt. Pitt's favored by 14.5. Give me Pitt. And I think they win by about 12. I don't think they cover, but give me Pitt. I don't really think Virginia's sold. Their starting quarterback's hurt, and Notre Dame just bodied them last week. So give me Pitt and Kenny Pickett. I'm not really sold that Pitt is that good, but I just think UVA is a little bit too injured.
Yeah, I'll go with what you said. I'll take them to cover, but I think
Okay.
they're overrated.
Yeah, I do
I
too.
think that they're one of the teams that you could easily flop from 15 to 25. You could put them anywhere. Well, not 15, probably
18 is
18
where
to
they're at.
25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next, you got number 21 Arkansas at number 2 Alabama. Alabama's favored by 20 and a half, and I think they cover.
I'm gonna agree with you. I think this team is gonna turn it around from what we've seen. I mean, obviously it's just a prediction, but we want to start seeing Alabama turn around. We want to see it because you don't want to go into the SEC championship game and watch an absolute blowout. When you look at the championship games of conferences, you want to see a good game, and I hope that they go and give Georgia a good game, whether the outcome is in their favor or not. So I'll take them to cover the spread on Arkansas.
Here's the only issue. I don't think this is necessarily how good Bama is. I think it's more that I'm not really sold that Arkansas is that great. Um, the Alabama offensive line is the worst it's been in 10 years, right? Against LSU, they only had 6 rushing yards. And the reason that I have Alabama at 5 in my rankings is because this does not, they have not been the same Alabama team as previous years, right? They have the best coach in college football in Nick Saban, but that only carries you so far when what they're doing on the field doesn't reflect Alabama. They are where they at because of their name, and I'm not saying that I necessarily disagree with them getting benefit of the doubt, but until they prove it, I can't put it otherwise, and New Mexico State didn't prove it for me. So this could be the game that they prove it and they win by 4 touchdowns.
I mean, it's not the same Alabama team, but you can say it for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we said earlier, they're young, and we'll see what happens. I mean, the game that they're looking forward to is the team at the top of the rankings, which, I mean, I think any team in the
Don't
top
overlook
five would
this
look
team though.
forward to that.
The thing is, in Alabama's road to get to the playoff is right in front of them, but now they have to beat Arkansas, win the Iron Bowl, and beat Georgia, which is not easy by any means.
Oh no, I mean, when you think of rivalry games, they're never going to be easy. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just how it is. But you have to go in there, and Nick Saban knows this. Their only option is to go in there and win.
Yep, that they can't lose. And the thing is, I thought that Alabama would have turned it around already, being Alabama.
But their biggest problem is they've overlooked some of these past teams, and I think they're finally around that. I think they're looking like, look, we want to get in the playoffs. We want to continue what we've done the past 5 years. It's go time now. And if they don't do that, then they're not going to make the playoffs. I mean,
Yeah.
they know they have to go in and beat Georgia. If they don't beat Georgia, there's no way a two-loss team, even in a conference championship, goes to the playoffs. It's just that if they did that, then you can just tell it's rigged. But without that win against Georgia, they will not make it.
Right. Right. Next game, you got UAB 7-3 at number 22 UTSA, favored by 4.5.
Oh, this is my game. I'm taking UAB to win this.
UAB to upset. I got UTSA, and I think that they're going to win by double digits. UTSA, their last big game that they played, they did end up blowing out the cover. And I'm going to go with that. I'll take the Roadrunners. I'm rooting for them to go undefeated this season. Next up, you got Nebraska at Wisconsin. Wisconsin only favored by 9.5.
I haven't looked much into Wisconsin, but you've told me that their offense turned it around, so I will take Wisconsin to win this game, and I will take them to cover.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin's going to hand Nebraska their biggest loss of the year. And it's more of Nebraska on the road isn't the same team as home. Um, they've played close in their road games, but I think they're at the point, CJ, where they're out of gas. They have no chance of
Oh, I
making.
mean,
They have no chance at making a bowl. They've played all these tough teams really close, and they get up for those games. Wisconsin is just steamrolling right now, and I think that that's just going to carry the weight. This game could be close through the first quarter and a half, I'd say, but Wisconsin pulls away.
they got the hardest schedule in college football, and it's not even a question.
Yeah, they do. Nebraska's schedule was brutal, absolutely brutal. Them and Indiana's schedule is not easy either.
No, and they've been playing with a third string all year.
You know that they do not have a Power Five win. There's only 2 teams in college football without a Power Five win. Two teams in the Power Five without a win against another Power Five team. Can you name the two? I just gave you one of them. Was Indiana.
Indiana and probably Vanderbilt.
It was Vanderbilt. Yep.
I was gonna say them or Missouri, but I didn't look at Missouri.
No, it was Vanderbilt. Next up, you got BYU on the road at Georgia Southern. BYU favored by 20. This is another team that's going to be joining the Big 12, which is a pretty cool deal. Don't you agree?
Oh yeah, I mean that helps with the two teams leaving. Uh, this really helps them out, especially with UC coming in. Houston will also be moving to the Big 12. I think that's really going to help them out.
Yeah.
But I'll take BYU to cover.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see these teams in basketball because you got to think Cincinnati's going to be playing Kansas in basketball.
Oh yeah, I mean basketball's going to be weird, but I think it helps them out for football. But I mean even for basketball, like it's going to help them get bigger recruits.
Yeah.
But uh, I'm more excited for football than I am basketball.
That's fair. That's fair. Give me BYU to win and cover. Next game, I got Syracuse at NC State. NC State favored by 11. The Wolfpack take it on the Orange. Kickoffs at 4 p.m. on ACC Network. Give me NC State to win and cover, I guess. Syracuse has stuck around in some close games with people, but I don't really think they're that great.
I'll take NC State to cover.
Okay. Next, we have a very interesting game here. This could be upset right here. You got number 11 Baylor at Kansas State, 7-3, a team who I said should be fighting to be in the rankings. They're in my rankings, and it's an even line. Um, I almost really want to pick Kansas State in this game, and I guess I will. I'll take Kansas State to beat Baylor, just for the simple fact that if you look at a lot of teams in the past, CJ, Ohio State beats Penn State, then they turn around and lose to Iowa. Iowa, gets that big win against Purdue, or Iowa gets that big win against Penn State this year. They turn around and lose to Purdue. Michigan State gets a hard-fought win against Michigan, and then they come out the next game and look flat and lose to Purdue. After you win a huge game, it's hard to come back the next week. And you see it a lot, the hangovers there, where you struggle after you get a big win. And I think Kansas State is going to do that to Baylor.
Oh, I 100% agree. But I agree with you about the hangover period. Like once you beat a big team, I'm going to take Baylor to win this.
Okay. Next one you got. I would rather
And
this
it's
be played.
even, so
I would rather this game be played right now, CJ, than Charleston Southern Tennessee State. Vanderbilt at Ole Miss. It's a conference game. I don't care if it's Vanderbilt. Ole Miss is favored by 36.5.
which
I
they
picked
they
them to
should
win.
be.
I don't think they cover. I think they win by about 30.
I'll take them to cover. I mean, I don't. Vanderbilt is not good, and we're just going to see what Matt Corral does.
Yeah, next up you got, I'm sorry, Ryan. Oregon at Utah. Utah, the Utes are favored by 3. They've been on a hot streak. I think Oregon loses this week.
I mean, you know how I've felt about Oregon the last couple weeks. I told you I don't think they even deserve to be there. So I'm going to take Utah over Oregon. I said one win against a ranked team does not, against a top 5 team, doesn't dignify what they've done against the horrible teams. And you could say that for Oklahoma, which they got punished for what they did. But the fact that they were holding that Ohio State win over, you
What about
played 2 close
Alabama?
games, one to UCLA, one to Cal, and then you also go and lose to Stanford, which is the worst, might be the worst loss in the top 10
It is.
who all have losses.
It is definitely the worst loss in the top 10.
So I would probably, I'm going to take Utah, and I think they'll cover.
Utah to win and cover. Unless
Yep.
Oregon starts out hot, and I think they could. But I just think Utah at home is going to be too much. And the thing is, that doesn't help Oregon is no matter what, CJ, they're going to have to play this team twice in the Pac-12 championship.
Oh, yeah, it definitely won't be easy, but I mean, a lot of people also have to realize we're not talking about the same Oregon team who played Ohio State in week 3, right? Was that week
Yeah.
3 or was it week 2?
Week
We're
two.
not talking about the same
Wait,
team
was
who
it
played
week two?
Ohio State.
Week two.
we're not talking about the same team who played Ohio State in week 2. They're injury prone. They've been injured all year. They lost their running back, who was probably he could have been in the Heisman race, but he's out for the year. Like it's not the same team, and that's okay. But I just don't see them beating Utah twice.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with them. But this is if they win this though, they should be
If
sitting pretty.
if they win this, then I will give them their credit. But until they can show to me that they can beat another good team, I will not give them their credit.
Okay, and the next game, I was thinking about picking an upset here. Oklahoma State at Texas Tech. Oklahoma State 9-1 at Texas Tech 6-4. Oklahoma State favored by 10.5 on the road. Oklahoma State is another team that's been hot. They have a really good defense, but Texas Tech offense is good. But I think Oklahoma State ultimately shuts this team down.
I'll take Oklahoma State, and I'll take Oklahoma State for the lone fact is that I kind of hope to see them in the Big 12 championship against Oklahoma. I don't know what the likelihood of it happening is, but I won't take them to cover.
But if they win Bedlam next week, then I think as long as Baylor loses, then it happened. It's weird to talk about Oklahoma not making the Big 12 championship, but I think that's really going to be it across the board. Anything else you want to say this week about anything? I mean, I guess last week I did want to say that I had 4 of my podcast peeps. I guess you're going to say it all at games, and if the game was at home, CJ would have been there. I had Matt at the Ohio State Purdue game. Ryan was at the Oregon Washington State game. Other Ryan, Daughtry, was at Penn State versus Michigan. And Bryce Duke was at Oklahoma State versus TCU. So, in this week, we got I'm going to the shoe for the Ohio State and Michigan State, and CJ, you'll be at SMU Cincinnati.
Yes, I will.
So, we will be keeping our eyes peeled. So another great weekend. Looking forward to college football. This is an okay week, I'd say, across the board. You got one top 7 matchup, but if without it, it kind of looks like a lame week, wouldn't you say?
I really wouldn't say lame. I mean, I think it's pretty good across the board. I mean, when you got some teams playing weak teams, but also there's others that are playing really good conference games, and I think that's what holds it down.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 has a big week this week with Iowa State, Oklahoma, and Baylor, Kansas State. And then you got to talk about, if you're not going to talk about Michigan State, Ohio State, SMU Cincinnati is a huge one for the American. That game's on ESPN. Oregon at Utah is absolutely massive for playoff indications.
Oh yeah, I mean I think that's Oregon season right there.
Yeah, that makes or break it. I think Wake Forest drops out of the top 10 this week after they lose to Clemson. That's But overall, I guess it's not a horrible week. But we've seen better, definitely seen worse.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be a good week, and well,
Thank you for joining
we'll
me,
know more
even if
next
it was
Tuesday.
late. But thanks for coming on at all. I appreciate it, CJ.
Oh, no problem.
And that is gonna wrap it up. As soon as I can get my mouse to work. Yep. There we go. And that is gonna be it. Thank you for stopping by.